Dinner time, Ezekiel 34. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, Thus said the Master Jehovah to the shepherds, Woe to the shepherds of Israel, who have been feeding themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock? You eat the fat and you put on the wool. You slaughter the fatlings, you do not feed the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, nor have you healed the sick, nor bound up the broken, nor brought back the straying, nor sought what was lost. But you have ruled them with might and harshness. And they were scattered, because there was no shepherd. And they became food for all the beasts of the field when they were scattered. My sheep wandered through all the mountains and on every high hill, and my sheep were scattered over all the face of the earth, and no one was seeking or searching for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of Jehovah. As I live, declares the Master Jehovah, because my flock became a prey, and my flock became food for every beast of the field, and not having a shepherd, and my shepherds did not search for my flock. But the shepherds fed themselves, and did not feed my flock. Therefore, O shepherds, hear the word of Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah, See, I am against the shepherds, and shall require my flock at their hand, and shall make them cease feeding the sheep, and the shepherds shall feed themselves no more. And I shall deliver my flock from their mouths, and they shall no longer be food for them. For thus said the Master Jehovah, See, I myself shall search for my sheep, and seek them out. And as a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he is among his scattered sheep, so I shall seek out my sheep and deliver them from all the places where they were scattered in a day of cloud and thick darkness. And I shall bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the lands, and shall bring them to their own land. And I shall feed them on the mountains of Israel, in the valleys and in all the dwelling of the land. In good pasture I shall feed them, and their fold shall be on the high mountains of Israel. They shall lie there in a good fold and feed in rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. And I shall feed my flock and make them lie down, declares the Master Jehovah. I shall seek out the lost and bring back the strayed, and I shall bind up the broken and strengthen what was sick. But the fat and the strong I shall destroy. I shall feed them with right ruling. And as for you, O my flock, thus said the Master Jehovah, See, I am judging between sheep and sheep, between rams and goats. It is not enough for you to have eaten up the good pasture, and the rest of your pasture you trample with your feet, or that you should drink of the clear waters, and the rest you muddy with your feet. And as for my flock, they eat what you have trampled with your feet, and they drink what you have muddied with your feet. Therefore, thus said the Master Jehovah to them, See, I myself shall judge between fat and lean sheep. Because you have pushed with flank and shoulder, and thrust at all the weak ones with your horns, and scattered them abroad. Therefore I shall save my flock, and let them no longer be a prey, and I shall judge between sheep and sheep. And I shall raise up over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he shall feed them and be their shepherd. And I, Jehovah, shall be their Elohim, and my servant David, a prince in their midst. I, Jehovah, have spoken. And I shall make a covenant of peace with them, and make evil beasts cease from the land, and they shall dwell safely in the wilderness, and sleep in the forest. And I shall make them and the places all around my hill a blessing, and shall cause showers to come down in their season. Showers of blessing they are. And the trees of the field shall yield their fruit, and the earth yield her increase, and they shall be safe in their land. And they shall know that I am Jehovah, when I have broken the bars of their yoke, and I shall deliver them from the hand of those who enslave them, and they shall no longer be prey for the nations, and the beasts of the earth shall not devour them. And they shall dwell safely with no one to make them afraid. And I shall raise up for them a planting place of name, and they shall no longer be consumed by hunger in the land, nor bear the shame of the nations any more. And they shall know that I, Jehovah their Elohim, am with them, and that they, the house of Israel, are my people, declares the Master Jehovah. And you, my flock, the flock of my pasture, are men, and I am your Elohim, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. And you shall say to it, Thus said the Master Jehovah, See, O Mount Seir, I am against you, and shall stretch out my hand against you, and shall make you a ruin and a waste. Your cities I destroy, and let you be a ruin, and you shall know that I am Jehovah. Because you had a continuous enmity, and handed the children of Israel over to the power of the sword at the time of their calamity, at the time of the crookedness of the end. Therefore, as I live, declares the Master Jehovah, I shall appoint you for blood, and let blood pursue you. Since you did not hate blood, therefore blood shall pursue you. And I shall make Mount Seir a ruin and a waste, and cut off from it the one who leaves and the one who returns, and shall fill its mountains with the slain, those slain by the sword, falling on your hills, and in your valleys, and in all your ravines. I shall make you an everlasting ruin, and your cities uninhabited, and you shall know that I am Jehovah. Because you have said, These two nations and these two lands are mine, and we shall possess them, although Jehovah was there. Therefore, as I live, declares the Master Jehovah, I shall do according to your displeasure, and according to your envy, which you showed in your hatred against them. And I shall make myself known among them when I judge you. And you shall know that I am Jehovah. I have heard all your scorns which you have spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, They are laid waste, they were given to us for food. And with your mouth you have boasted against me, and increased your words against me. I myself have heard. Thus said the Master Jehovah, As all the earth is rejoicing, I shall make you a ruin. As you rejoiced because of the inheritance of the house of Israel was laid waste, so I do to you. Be a ruin, O Mount Seir, as well as all of Edom, all of it, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. And you, son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel, and you shall say, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah, Because the enemy has said of you, Aha, the heights of old have become our possession. Therefore prophesy, and you shall say, Thus said the Master Jehovah, because they laid you waste and swallowed you up on every side, so that you became the possession of the rest of the nations. And you are taken up by the lips of talkers and slandered by the people. Therefore, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Master Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah to the mountains and to the hills, to the rivers and to the valleys, and to the deserted ruins, and to the cities that have been forsaken, which became a prey and a mocking to the rest of the nations all around. Therefore thus said the Master Jehovah, have I not spoken in my burning jealousy against the rest of the nations and against all Edom, who gave my land to themselves as a possession, with all joy of heart, with scorn in their being, to drive it out for a prey? Therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel, and you shall say to mountains and to hills, to rivers and to valleys, thus said the Master Jehovah, see, I have spoken in my jealousy and my wrath, because you have borne the shame of the nations. Therefore thus said the Master Jehovah, I have lifted my hand in an oath, that the nations that are around you shall bear their own shame. But you, O mountains of Israel, put forth your branches and bear your fruit to my people Israel, for they are about to come. For look, I am for you, and I shall turn to you, and you shall be tilled and sown, and I shall increase men upon you. All the house of Israel, all of it, and the cities shall be inhabited, and the ruins rebuilt. And I shall increase upon you man and beast, and they shall increase and bear young. And I shall make you inhabited as of old, and do better for you than at your beginnings. And you shall know that I am Jehovah. And I shall let men, my people Israel, walk upon you, and let them possess you, and you shall be their inheritance, and no longer let you add to their bereavement. Thus said the Master Jehovah, because they say to you, you devour men and have bereaved your nations. Therefore you shall no longer devour men and no longer bereave your nations, declares the Master Jehovah. And no longer shall I let you hear the insults of the nations, and the reproach of the peoples you shall bear no more, and no longer cause your nations to stumble, declares the Master Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own ways and deeds. To me their way was like the uncleanness of a woman in her monthly period. So I poured out my wrath on them for the blood they had shed on the land, and for their idols they defiled it. And I scattered them among the nations, and they were dispersed throughout the lands, and I have judged them according to their ways and their deeds. And when they came to the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my set-apart name, for it was said of them, These are the people of Jehovah, and yet they have gone out of his land. But I had compassion on my set-apart name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore say to the house of Israel, Thus said the Master Jehovah, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my set-apart name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. And I shall set apart my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst. And the nations shall know that I am Jehovah, declares the Master Jehovah, when I am set apart in you before their eyes. And I shall take you from among the nations, and I shall gather you out of all lands, and I shall bring you into your own land. And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols I cleanse you. And I shall give you a new heart, and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh, and put my spirit within you. And I shall cause you to walk in my laws, and guard my right rulings, and shall do them. And you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I shall be your Elohim. And I shall save you from all your uncleanness, and I shall call for the grain and increase it, and I shall bring no scarcity of food upon you. and I shall increase the fruit of your trees and the increase of your fields, so that you need never again bear the reproach of the scarcity of food among the nations. And you shall remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, and you shall loathe yourselves in your own eyes for your crookedness and your abominations. Not for your sake am I acting, declares the Master Jehovah. Let it be known to you. Be ashamed and blush for your ways, O house of Israel. Thus said the Master Jehovah, on the day that I cleanse you from all your crookedness, I shall cause the cities to be inhabited, and the ruined places shall be rebuilt, and the land that was laid waste, tilled instead of being a ruin before the eyes of all who pass by. And they shall say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden, and the wasted, the deserted, and the destroyed cities are now walled and inhabited. Then the nations which are left all around you shall know that I, Jehovah, have rebuilt the destroyed places and planted what was laid waste. I, Jehovah, have spoken it, and I shall do it. Thus said the Master Jehovah, once again I shall let the house of Israel inquire of me to do for them, as I shall increase their men like a flock. As a set-apart flock, as the flock at Jerusalem at her appointed times, so shall the wasted cities be filled with flocks of men, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. The hand of Jehovah was upon me, and took me out by the Spirit of Jehovah, and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was filled with bones. And he made me pass among them all around, and see, there were many, very many on the surface of the valley, and see, they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, would these bones live? And I said, O Master Jehovah, you know. Again he said to me, prophesy to these bones, and you shall say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Jehovah. Thus said the Master Jehovah to these bones, see, I am bringing into you a spirit, and you shall live. And I shall put sinews on you, and bring flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put a spirit in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am Jehovah. And I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise, and there was a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to bone. And I looked and saw sinews and flesh came upon them, and skin covered them, and there was no spirit in them. He then said to me, prophesy to the spirit, prophesy, Son of man, and you shall say to the spirit, thus said the Master Jehovah, come from the four winds, O Spirit, and breathe on these killed ones, so that they live. And I prophesied as he commanded me, and the Spirit came into them, and they lived, and stood upon their feet, a very great army. And he said to me, Son of man, these bones are all the house of Israel. See, they say, our bones are dry, our expectancy has perished, and we ourselves have been cut off. Therefore prophesy, and you shall say to them, thus said the Master Jehovah, see, O my people, I am opening your burial sites, and shall bring you up from your burial sites, and shall bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Jehovah, when I open your burial sites, my people, and bring you up from your burial sites. And I shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I shall settle you in your own land, and you shall know that I, Jehovah, have spoken, and I have done it, declares Jehovah. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, and you, son of man, Take a stick for yourself and write on it, for Yehuda and for the children of Israel, his companion. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. Then bring them together for yourself into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, won't you show us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus said the Master Jehovah, see, I am taking the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I shall give them unto him with the stick of Yehuda, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks on which you write shall be in your hand before their eyes. And speak to them, thus said the Master Jehovah, see, I am taking the children of Israel from among the nations, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and I shall bring them into their land. And I shall make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one sovereign shall be sovereign over them all. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns. And they shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, nor with their disgusting matters, nor with any of their transgressions. And I shall save them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and I shall cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I be their Elohim. While David, my servant, is sovereign over them, and they shall all have one shepherd, and walk in my right rulings, and guard my laws, and shall do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given to Yaakov my servant, where your fathers dwelt, and they shall dwell in it, they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David be their prince forever. And I shall make a covenant of peace with them, an everlasting covenant it is with them, and I shall place them and increase them, and shall place my set-apart place in their midst forever. And my dwelling place shall be over them, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And the nations shall know that I, Jehovah, am setting Israel apart, when my set-apart place is in their midst forever. And the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And you shall say, Thus says the Master Jehovah, See, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. And I shall turn you around, and I shall put hooks into your jaws, and shall lead you out, with all your army, horses and horsemen, clad perfectly, a great assembly with armor and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Cush, and Put are all with them, and all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all its bands, the house of Togarma from the far north, and all its bands, many peoples with you. Be ready, prepare yourself, you and all your assemblies that are assembled unto you, and you shall be a guard for them. After many days you shall be called up. In the latter years you shall come into the land of those brought back from the sword, and gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel, which had been a continual waste. But they were brought out of the peoples, and all of them shall dwell safely. And you shall go up, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud, you and all your bands and many peoples with you. Thus said the Master Jehovah. And it shall be in that day that words arise in your heart, and you shall devise an evil plan. And you shall say, Let me go up against the land of unwalled villages, Let me go to those at rest who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, and against a people gathered from the peoples, acquiring livestock and goods, who dwell in the middle of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, all their young lions shall say to you, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your army to take the booty, to bear away silver and gold, and to take away livestock and goods, to take great plunder? Therefore, Son of man, prophesy, and you shall say to Gog, thus said the Master Jehovah, in that day when my people Yisrael dwells safely, would you not know? And you shall come from your places, out of the far north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great assembly and a mighty army. And you shall come up against my people Yisrael like a cloud to cover the land. In the latter days it shall be, and I shall bring you against my land, in order that the nations know me, when I am set apart in you, O Gog, before their eyes. Thus said the Master Jehovah, are you the one I spoke of in former days by my servants the prophets of Yisrael, who prophesied for years in those days to bring you against them? And it shall be on that day, on the day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, declares the Master Jehovah, that my wrath shall come up in my face. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath I have spoken. On that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel, so that the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field and all creeping creatures that creep on the earth, and all men who are on the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. And the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall fall to the ground. And I shall call for a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the Master Jehovah, the sword of each one being against his brother. And I shall judge him with pestilence and blood, and rain down flooding rain and hailstones, fire and sulfur on him and on his bands, and on the many peoples who are with him. And I shall exalt myself and set myself apart, and I shall be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Jehovah.